Hi everyone, welcome to Innovation Tech Community. Today, we have a guest Sweta, so she can explain about the how to integrate OpenAI with some samples. I would like to hand over the session to the Sweta, so we can proceed to the how to integrate the OpenAI with real time. Okay, with Azure Vector Search.
To OpenAI completion endpoint. So let's get started with this. And I'm not going to talk much about the theoretical portions of it because I have already covered few of those concepts in my earlier videos. So first of all, I will show you how can you create an instance of Azure Cognitive Search Service. So this is my Azure portal, and make sure that you have an active subscription and you are logged in with your credentials. Then you can go ahead and search for Cognitive Search. Click on create, and here you need to furnish all these basic details which you must have already done if you have interacted with any of the Azure service. You need to select your subscription. Then here you need to provide the resource group. So if you want, you can utilize the one which is already created. Otherwise, feel free to go ahead and create the new one. And then you need to provide the service name, which is again has to be unique, and then the location which is closest to you, or where your other instances are deployed if you are going to use other Azure services with this particular solution. And then comes the pricing tiers. So there are multiple pricing tiers. You can choose whatever works for you. For this demo purpose, I'm going with the basic one. So once this all these details are populated, you can click on review plus create. In my case, I have already created this instance, so I'm not going to go ahead and create a new one. Rather, I will show you how it looks. So once your instance is created, you will see a page something like this. And under the indexes, there is nothing which you can see. Under the indexers, there is nothing which you can see because this is a freshly created instance. So this is the one thing. Second thing is you need to go ahead and grab your OpenAI key. So if you're not sure how to do that, you can quickly go on to platform.openai.com, log in with your credentials, and on the right hand side, if you will click on your name, you will see View API keys. Click on this particular option, and this is where you can grab the key. So if you have already made a note of your keys, then you can go ahead and use the existing one. But by any chance, if you didn't remember your key, then go ahead and create the new one using this particular button, create new secret key. So this is how we used to do setup. And in this entire scenario, we will be needing, like I said, three key things. The first one is API key, and then we need the key from this Azure instance, and that I can show you from where can you get that key and the endpoints. So you, on the left hand side, you can click on keys, and here you can see these are the keys. So grab the one. So in my case, I can show you I just grab this primary admin key, but you can choose based on your choice. And second thing is you need to have the endpoint for this service. So for grabbing the endpoint, you can just click on the overview button here, and you will see something like this. So this is the URL. You can see HTTPS channel. So definitely it would be different for you based on what is your resource name, but this is what we need to get started with our solution.
The answer might surprise you, but do you know how much time it took for me to create this amazing
I'm taking a text file which is handbook text, and this is the same file which I have grabbed it from the Azure documentation where they're talking about some fictitious company Contoso, and it is about the Contoso Electronics Employee Handbook. This is not very huge, but I would say it's a good file. And you can see there are some special characters which I have not cleaned up, but when you are working with real time scenarios or your actual data, make sure to clean your data before using it. So now you have your data ready, you have your keys ready. Let's go ahead and get started with our code. The first thing which we need is to import the required packages. Now before importing, let me get into my virtual environment, and so that I need not to install my packages again and again. Okay, so my environment is activated, and here are the few things. So let me remove these things which we don't need. And the first one we need is OpenAI package. Then we need OS because we are going to interact with the local file system. Here are the few pertaining to Azure. So these are the ones which we need. And inside models, you can see that these are the various classes which we will be using. So once these things are done, I will go ahead and run this particular cell. Oops, it has something is wrong here. Let me quickly have a look. So it is not defined. So let me run this particular cell because this is where I have defined all my keys. Now it is up to you whether you are taking it in an environment variable or you just want to set as a constant variable. So I have done it in my this step. Now I have ran this particular cell. It is successful. Next, we will go ahead and create the vector configuration. So for vector configuration, you need to define your configuration name. So this is the class which we are using to create the configuration, and this is the name of my config. You can definitely name whatever you want, and as of now it supports HNSW kind, and these are the various parameters. Now what these parameters are and how they are contributing to this vector search, there is a very good documentation. I would suggest you to go through it, but in nutshell I can say you that setting these parameters will make your search very very efficient. So let me point you to the documentation. So this is where we have details about the HNSW parameters, and you can see that EF, K as well as M and EF construction and the number of elements. So these are all the parameters which we have used it over here. So you can go ahead and read about those, and you can also see that if we are setting these values very high, it may impact our output. So make sure that you are going with the optimum one. Okay, so let me run this cell as well. It is successful. Next, we are going to, now we have our vector configuration ready. We need to define what all fields should we have in our vector, right? So in my case, I'm going to save a document ID because we need a column or a field which can uniquely identify your record. So in my case, I'm taking it as a document ID, and for simplicity purpose, I'm not taking much of these columns, rather just going with these three. And the content is the one which is in my text file, and this is the embedding column. It means this is the same embedding which is generated for this particular content. So these are the three columns which I'm expecting in my index, and here comes my index name, which is handbook. Now when you are giving name to your index, there are certain rules. I would recommend you to go ahead and read the documentation, but the one which I can remember is it will not take a capital letter in your index name. Similarly, there are restricted special characters which you cannot use. So just keep in mind that if it doesn't work, then you are messing something with your index name. Now we have the fields ready, we have the index name ready, we have the client object created, and see that in the client object we are passing the endpoint and the search key. So this is the place where we are going to use these two credentials. Then we are saying, okay, go ahead and create an index for me in this last line using the create index function, which will take three parameters. The first one is your index name, second is the fields which you are going to accommodate in your index, and the third one is your vector search, which is nothing but your configuration. So once these things are ready, we can go ahead and run the cell, which is successful. Let's go ahead and chunk our document. So like I said, my document is huge, so we cannot pass it in one shot, and that's the reason I'm using LangChain here to split my entire text. And this is again not a restriction that you should go with only this kind of split. You can have your own mechanism to split or chunk your text, but the ultimate goal is to get the chunks out of your entire text. So rather than sending the single document in one shot, we will be sending small pieces. And here I'm creating a chunk size of 1000 with an overlap of 50, because it's okay if I'm losing some information, but still I would like to have like 50 as an overlap, so that I don't miss it completely. Let me run this as well. And at the same time, I will show you how this. Okay, so this is successful. Let's go ahead and run this one. And here you can see these are the two documents which were created out of my input text, which was a single file. And here you have a page content. And at the end, you will have your document name. Let me show here. So this is another property which is metadata and is holding my document name. So if you want, you can utilize these things, but in my case, I'm not very much interested into what my document name is, because at this point I'm having a single document. But if you are having multiple text file, or you are multiple text files, or if you're reading directory, then in that case, it's good to have this document name also part of your index. Okay, so let's close this one. And next thing what we are going to do is, now we have our chunks ready. We need to push those chunks into a vector database, right? And before moving on to that, let me quickly show you the current state of our vector database. So let's go to indexes, and here you can see that the handbook is created because we already ran that cell. And these are the fields which we created, and right now there are no documents because we have not uploaded anything over here. So that's the reason it is showing 0 bytes. So let's go ahead and create some documents so that we can push it into our vector database. So here what we are saying, now we have these chunks ready, and now we need to extract the information out of it and create a schema which is compatible with the configuration which we have defined in vector database. So according to the schema, first we need a document ID. So in my case, I have just generated the GUID or UUID, whatever you call. Then I have the content, which is nothing but the page content. And then I'm generating the embedding. So this is a function which I have already defined above, and I'm just passing the content, and it will go ahead and generate the embedding for that particular content. Then I'm saving it into a JSON file. Let me run this particular cell and I can show you. Again, we end up with an error. So this is a function which I have defined above. I need to run this one. And now it should work. Okay, so let's have a look at the file which is generated. And on the left hand side, this is the file which got generated. And you can see here that it is having a document ID on the first line. Then it is having the content, and it is followed by the embedding. So this is what we are expecting, and this is what we are going to push it into our vector database. So now we have the JSON ready with us. Next is we need to upload it. So for uploading, we have just few lines of code. We are reading the JSON file in this variable, and we are using the search client, which is having a function called upload documents. So this upload documents will take whatever there is present in our JSON file. So this is again a straightforward code, and we are not doing anything much over here. So let's go ahead and try out few queries. So now I want to ask, what information does this handbook has? Now here I'm just using the vector class which will generate the embedding for the query, because we are comparing embedding against embedding, right? And in this case, so you should have embedding of your query which can be compared against the embeddings which are stored in the vector database. So this is the line which is doing that thing for us. So we are saying generate the embedding and get me just the top 2 results out of it. So once we have those top 2 results, here we can go ahead and get this printed. So result content is the one which is holding the result of those top 2 rows. And next thing what we need to do is, whatever the top 2 rows we are getting, we need to club those, because that would be the context for our OpenAI API completion endpoint. So that's the reason I'm generating this input variable over here, input text. And here and then do it. So in order to reduce that overhead, I just went ahead with turbo instruct. And this is my question here. So answer the question based on the given input, and input is nothing but the text which we grabbed it from, or the content which we grabbed it from our vector database. And this is the query. So let me run this one here. And you can see that this handbook contains information about contour electronics, including mission, values, performance, reviews, all these things. So this is how you can get the output. And we have seen that how easy it is to read the text file, generate embeddings out of it, push those embeddings into vector database, and then extract the relevant content from the vector database and pass it on to the OpenAI. So this is, like, I would say, the initial flow or the beginner's flow, which can help you to get started with these services. But if you're working with your real time examples or the samples, then in that case you may need to tweak it a bit. You may have to read the indexes or delete the indexes. You may need to think of the mechanism, how you can update your existing indexes. So those are the things which I will be covering soon in my upcoming videos. But let's keep this video simple.